Hi everyone, it's David from Automotive Press. Guess what? I have a 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser on one side and 2024 Ford Bronco Everglade Edition on the other side. Both of them very off-road capable, although the Bronco is a little bit more of a serious off-roader. And both of these vehicles are some of the most attractive SUV these days because they are body on the frame and they're very capable wherever you take them. So let's do a direct comparison of the Ford Bronco Everglade against Toyota Land Cruiser, which is the one I actually own, and let's see which one comes to the top. Let's go. Welcome back. So we have the 2024 Land Cruiser against 2024 Ford Bronco. Both of them have slightly different equipment to cater to the off-roaders, but both of them are extremely capable, and therefore it's going to be super exciting to compare them side by side to see which one has a better quality, better performance, and overall better package. Let's take a look at my Land Cruiser first. This is a first edition, all new for 2024, built in Japan at the Hamura plant, which is part of Hino, which is owned by Toyota. And let's take a look at the quality first. I think you guys already know that I've done this a couple of times, and the quality, as usual, is superb. It's 3.3 millimeter gap, about 3 millimeter here. It's pretty consistent, about 3.2 millimeter there, and all the way through, give or take, between 3.1 to 3.3 millimeter right here. And you can tell, for example, the fuel cap is really nicely flushed. Everything lines up, and the paint quality is also really good, especially the clear coat. And I'll talk about paint a little bit more later on. It's also the same on the other side. Let's take a look at the Ford Bronco, which, by the way, is an important model now because this represents new step forward for Ford as it tried to compete with Jeep Wrangler with a slightly different design, and it's selling very well. So obviously Ford has hit a very important niche market. I know the Land Cruiser did not quite go after the Ford Bronco or the Jeep Wrangler. That's a bit of a disappointment because we were hoping that they would take it one step further and have removable doors and roofs and so forth. So that didn't happen for the Land Cruiser, and also for the new generation 4Runner that's coming out soon. They also didn't go after the Ford Bronco or the Wrangler market because the doors are not removable there as well. But anyhow, I think in some ways they do still cater to the same market. People will cross shop between Land Cruiser, 4Runner, Bronco, and Jeep Wrangler, so they're all very much an important part of this market. Anyway, quality is actually quite good, but the design is very different because this hood is kind of sunken in, and you can see the front fenders, both left and right side, kind of coming on top, and they kind of almost wrap around. But the gaps are really good, 3.1 millimeter there, 3.1 there as well. I'm just not quite sure if the fact that this hood is sunken in a little bit was by design or they misaligned the hood a little bit because the fenders are a little bit too high compared to the hood. As I stand now, I feel like this is part of the design as they try to make very angular design main theme for the Bronco. Again, this is also the Everglades version with a pretty serious off-roading equipment and features. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But the rest of the gap is not bad. This is 3.2 millimeter, 3.4, and 3.2. But the alignment is off a bit. As you go from top to bottom, you can tell the doors are almost touching on the bottom. And then it also gets wider here. These doors are removable, so to some degree, it's harder to align everything, especially when they put the doors back on. There's probably some leeway, and that could allow for doors to become a little bit misaligned versus a Land Cruiser, which of course doesn't have removable doors, so everything is lined up correctly from the beginning. Now, as I walk toward the back, fuel door does look like it's properly aligned to the body as well. So it looks actually pretty good. Paint job looks really good. I love this blue color, very similar to Heritage blue color that's also available on the Land Cruiser. But when it comes to the rest of the body, it's hard to compare because these are also removable, which isn't the case with the Land Cruiser. So these gaps look ridiculously wide, but that's because these panels all comes off independently. Something that I wish they did offer either in the Land Cruiser or the 4Runner, because that would have been really cool if we could have removed the rooftop. But at least for now, we don't have that kind of offering from Toyota. As a summary, the Ford Broncos, the exterior panels are actually pretty good. Not quite as good as the Land Cruiser. Definitely, this is world class. This is not quite world class. If I have to give a ranking, I would say it's A or A plus on the Land Cruiser. This is more like a B or B plus let's take a look at the paint thickness to see what the difference might be. Okay, so now I have the paint thickness gauge. I'm going to measure the thickness of the paint on both of these vehicles. As I mentioned before, the thicker the paint, generally speaking, better because it's more durable, but the paint quality is not necessarily correlated to the paint thickness. Right now, paint jobs on both looks really good. The clear coat, especially on the Land Cruiser, looks fantastic. But what about the paint thickness? Well, let's measure the paint thickness on the hood. 122 on the Land Cruiser, which is pretty well average for Toyota, a little bit thicker than average actually. About 129 on the Ford Bronco, so just a little bit thicker. What about the front fender? 119 on the Bronco side, 138 on the Land Cruiser, so a little bit thicker. I noticed the Hamura built Land Cruiser seems to have a little bit thicker paint than the one that's built in Tara, because the Land Cruiser is built in 2 factories in Japan. So that's kind of interesting. What about the door? 106, which is a bit thinner than I thought, and 134. So looks like a Land Cruiser is going to have a slightly thicker paint all the way across, 114 versus 132, and finally one more on the rear quarter panel, 113 versus 141. So across the board, the Land Cruiser has thicker paint. I did notice Land Cruisers that's built in Tara plant have slightly thinner paint, between 110 to 125. This one is going almost up to 140s. But both paint thickness are about the same, give or take 10% to 15%. And the paint quality, as I mentioned, are actually really good on both cases. But the clear coat is clearly thicker on the Land Cruiser because I can tell by looking at it, and therefore the paint job is also better on the Land Cruiser than the Bronco. But having said that, the quality of the paint overall is excellent on the Ford Bronco, better than many other Ford I've seen so far. And so I actually have to give a lot of praise to Ford for making the Bronco with a pretty good overall body alignment and really good paint job as well. Now let's take a look inside. So now I'm inside the Land Cruiser and I'll hop into the Ford Bronco as well. But as we expect from a Toyota model, everything looks good in terms of the fit and finish and overall quality of the materials. You can see all of the moldings, the plastic pieces, how everything fit together, and the quality of the switch and the feel of the switch is all good. There's some kind of strange things about the designs. For example, the power button for the radio control is kind of in an awkward location and design because it used to be over here, from what I understand, but they had to move it there halfway through a design phase. So it looks kind of tacky and added on. But otherwise, all the switches work well. I'm glad that we have a proper shifter here that I can move up and down, not one of those buttons. And we have center locking differential, rear locking differential on this one, the big cup holders, and good size center console as well. Plus full digital instrumentation and also a 12.3 inches infotainment system, which is very easy to use and quick to respond. So no complaints about the interior. I would say it's a bit of a boring design for an expensive Land Cruiser. I wish they had a different mixture of color for the first edition and also give us a little bit of wood or a bit of a differentiation rather than just this one piece of design theme, just to give us a bit of a flavor and character. But that's okay. This is kind of a Land Cruiser style to keep it simple and to the point. And so design-wise, looks really good. Now let's take a look at the Ford Bronco. All right, so I hopped into the Ford Bronco now. And of course, we've seen this design before because Bronco has been around for a couple of years now. And overall, I like the design of the Bronco better. It's more aggressive, much more rugged looking, and the fact that everything looks kind of interesting from a design perspective. So I like it better. But the quality, maybe I'm not sure because it's a bit plasticky. These are all hard plastic. You can feel that. More hard plastic. It looks okay, but it feels cheap, I think. This is all hard plastic as well. And fit and finish is not bad, but I do see some gaps here and there. So I'm going to have to say once again that the Toyota Land Cruiser has better overall interior quality and fit and finish, but the design of the Bronco is better. Let me just kind of open up the infotainment system here. Okay, so I just turned on the car for a little bit so you can see the infotainment system. Very bright, really well designed infotainment system. I think actually better than Toyota version, I mean, in some respect. But more than that, just the overall feel of this vehicle, more functional, I think, more usable because the buttons are all here, nice and big, and it has a nice rubber textures as well. And lots of good grip as well here, which is similar to what you find in the 4Runner and Tacoma. But no grip here or here because of the removable roof, so they couldn't probably incorporate that. So it's a bit of a toss-up. I think overall I like the design theme on the Bronco, but the quality and the fit and finish is better on the Land Cruiser. You're going to have to decide which one makes sense more for you. Now keep in mind the biggest difference is the fact that these panels are removable. So the front and the back can be removed. So that is a huge difference compared to fixed roof on the Land Cruiser, which does have a sunroof, by the way. And also because of the removable doors, the power window switches are on the center section here, not on the doors, so that the door can be removed and you can still have the buttons intact here without having all the extra wiring that has to be removed. So those are some of the things that you'll notice on the Bronco inside. In terms of basic comfort of the seats and so forth, I would say they're quite comparable. The Ford Bronco has a really good seats, very supportive, lots of adjustment possible, although it's manual. And on my Land Cruiser, it's power seats, so it's also quite comfortable as well. But the most important thing is to look at the capability and the performance of these two vehicles. So let's take them on the road. Okay, so we talked about the exterior and the interior, but for me, the most important thing is how do they drive? So I'm taking the Land Cruiser out first. This is the one I own, so it's my everyday vehicle, and I know this vehicle really well. I recently did upgrade the wheels and tires to much bigger package with aggressive offset, as you probably noticed from some of the videos. So the ride is definitely stiffer than before and a bit bumpier, but as I will talk to you a little bit more when I hop into the Ford Bronco, the Land Cruiser is definitely smoother and more comfortable than the Bronco, especially the Everglade version, because that particular version of the Ford Bronco is designed to be a true off-road capable vehicle with the mud tires as opposed to off-road tires. So it's very capable, but it's also kind of bumpy. And again, I'll talk about that a little bit more when I hop into the actual Bronco. In terms of the Land Cruiser, it's smooth, very refined, very much a Toyota style. Like if you drive the 4Runner, you drive the Land Cruiser, and let's say you drive the Tacoma, they all have the same kind of feel. They use the same TNGA-F platform, body on the frame, but it's really well controlled. And even when I drove a bumpy road like this, suspension soaks up the bumps really well. So overall, I've been really happy with the ride quality of the Land Cruiser. It's super comfortable, smooth, it's quiet. It's bumpier now because of the tire change I made. But even with that, it is still much more comfortable than the Bronco. I think the handling is also pretty sharp and agile, and I think the feel of the steering is somewhat comparable between the Bronco and Land Cruiser. But for everyday driving, most people probably prefer the Land Cruiser. But for those people who does some serious off-roading, they're going to want to have the Everglade package on the Ford Bronco, because the combination of tire, wheels, and everything else that comes with that vehicle makes it very, very capable. And that isn't the actual purpose of the Land Cruiser. Even though this one is also very off-road capable, it was never designed to be quite at the same level as the Ford Bronco with that package. But in terms of the actual engine and the power plant, it is actually very smooth and quite refined on the Land Cruiser with a 2.4-liter turbo hybrid. But I feel like the Ford Bronco has a better power plant. That one has the 2.3-liter EcoBoost engine. And I do feel like the Bronco has a bit more of a faster acceleration and a quick pickup. So I think the engine feels better on the Bronco. But let me talk about that once I hop into the Bronco, because obviously that's when it's easy to explain everything. Okay, so now I'm in the Ford Bronco, which has a different powertrain options available, but this one has 2.3-liter EcoBoost Turbo 4 with 275 horsepower if you put a regular gas, which can go up to 300 horsepower if you put premium fuel, compared to 326 horsepower on Land Cruiser. So similar power and a similar output, but the way they calibrate it and tune the Ford Bronco, it feels faster right off the start. So if I step on the gas a little bit, it feels like it has a better boost and it kind of takes off. So the impression you get driving the Ford Bronco is that the basic power delivery and torque delivery feels like it's a little bit better compared to the Land Cruiser. On the other hand, maybe the Land Cruiser is designed to provide a smoother delivery, a little bit more of a refined feel. So that's probably intentional compared to Bronco, which is trying to give you that bit of a rugged feel. So I think that's minor difference between the two in terms of an engine feel. More of a difference is the fact that this is the Everglade edition with the huge mud tires, 315 in fact, compared to normal 265 on the Land Cruiser. I do have 285s on my Land Cruiser right now because I upgraded the wheels and tire. But either way, it's definitely rougher in terms of suspension feel on the Everglade because this is a true off-roader with the really capable mud tires and beefy suspension compared to Land Cruisers. So this one can be taken to some of the most rugged off-road courses, and therefore it's more of a true overlanding vehicle compared to the Land Cruiser, which is really meant for street use, even though it has a lot of capability built in as well. So if you are using this as an everyday vehicle, no question that the Land Cruiser is more comfortable and more refined. But if you want to take it to some of the most toughest courses out there, then you wouldn't do that with the Land Cruiser, even though it can probably handle a lot of it. Regardless of that, definitely the Bronco with all the added equipment is definitely better equipped to do that. Now, don't forget that the Bronco is available in many different grades, including one that's designed for more of a street use. So maybe it's not a fair apple-to-apple comparison in terms of ride and suspension, because you can also get a Ford Bronco with a normal tires and wheel package, which does have a substantially more comfortable ride. And maybe that's the direction you have to go if you're the type of person who don't really need to go off-roading. So that's something to keep in mind. But as it stands right now, the Land Cruiser is more comfortable, but this one is more capable. So what do I really think of these two? Well, keep in mind that the Land Cruiser comes in more or less the same format, whether you buy the base 1958 model or the premium model or the first edition. The capability and equipment and the powertrain are all the same versus Ford Bronco, which has many different options and many different variations of different trim levels. So for example, this is the Everglade version with some heavy duty off-roading equipment, including a proper winch right here if you get stuck and so forth. This has a snorkel right here. Beautiful design, actually. Kind of snakes this way, goes up. And so you can actually drive this into some depth of water and you won't kill the engine or exhaust system because of the fact that the snorkel will take much of the stress away from having water into the engine. We have the intake right here. So that's some of the really interesting stuff on the Bronco. And also this one has a full mud tire that's 315. So this is a huge tire compared to the Land Cruiser. Although I've upgraded mine, so you can tell on my particular Land Cruiser, I've got quite a large wheel package and very aggressive offset, so this is sticking out. This isn't for everyone. Not everyone's going to like what I chose as a package. But for me, I'm trying to get a certain look and feel that's reminiscent of the original concept vehicle that the designers created back in the day when the Land Cruiser was first formed. And that's why I chose this particular package with the 20-inch wheels, with the Falcon, the Wild Peak. But most people will want to go for 18-inch wheels versus 20-inch to increase the thickness here for off-roading. But for me, I want to balance the ride and handling, but also have the off-road capability, and that's why I have this one. But even with this package, you can't compare it to the Everglade package here with this huge mud tires. This is a Goodyear Territory MT tires, so this is really capable in terms of mud, in terms of even snow. But it's not a good everyday tires. This is truly not meant for refined ride, and you can tell it's pretty bumpy. Although suspension actually is really well designed, it just doesn't translate well in terms of the ride because of tire package. But once again, the biggest difference between these two approach to off-roading to SUV is the fact that Ford has gone full-fledged removable roof panels, just like the Wrangler, removable doors, although most people, like 99.9% of people, probably will never remove the doors. And then even at the back, you got the full Jeep Wrangler treatment with a spare tire on the outside, and the back opens this way, and then this will flip up. So they definitely did follow and copy the Jeep Wrangler recipe. So that's really the approach they took versus the Land Cruiser, which is still body on the frame, but this is more of a traditional SUV design. Although I do like the fact that I can flip up the window here, in addition to being able to open here as well. But still, this is very different from the Ford Bronco because I don't have spare tire in the back and so forth. The spare tire is actually underneath. So you're going to kind of have to decide what you're looking for. If you're looking for a Jeep Wrangler type vehicle with a lot of capability and you don't mind the vehicle being a little bit noisy because of the fact that you can remove the roof and so forth, either this or Jeep Wrangler is probably your best choice. Although I definitely do think the Ford Bronco is better than the Jeep Wrangler. It's quieter, it's more capable, it's a bit roomier. I think it's a better value overall. But if you want a daily driver that's crossover style and comfortable, but still with some capability, you can't beat the Land Cruiser. I actually think they hit a sweet spot with this Land Cruiser. Even though it is not a cheap vehicle, these two are about the same price, a little bit cheaper on the Ford Bronco side, but mainly because this is the first edition. For 2025, by the way, they have already announced changes for Land Cruiser, and there's no more first edition. You can only buy the 1958 or the normal Land Cruiser in either base or premium versions. And therefore, to get the round headlight, you have to buy the 1958 model, which is kind of a basic design with the cloth seats. But of course, with the Ford Bronco, all the models have the round headlights with this rugged look. So overall, it's kind of fun to drive both of them. At the end of the day, if I want a comfortable daily driver, this is the one. If I want to do some serious off-roading, this is the one. Both have a really interesting approach to designing and creating a beautiful off-roading SUV. You're going to have to drive both of them to decide which one's the right one for you. But if you do want open top feel with roof being removed and maybe even the doors being removed, you've got to go with the Ford Bronco. So I hope you enjoyed my engineer's review of both vehicles. If so, please give me a thumbs up, make some comments. And if you haven't done so yet, would you kindly subscribe as well? Until next video, I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much.